Hello YouTube, back with the next BattleBots review, and today I'm reviewing episode 6 from season 1.0. This proved to be somewhat a little bit more controversial, mostly because of Voltark versus Biohazard, and only because most people I don't think realized what was going on, what rules were in place at the time. They probably had, accusing Voltark of basically cheating because he was basically holding Biohazard and taking him to every hazard in the arena without any separation whatsoever. But as it turns out, there was no rule. There was nothing illegal about what Voltark was doing. It may have seemed that way because he was never letting go, but he wasn't. The only rule that was in place at the time was you can't pin your opponent against the wall for 3 minutes. That's what the rule was. Voltark was perfectly legal in what he was doing. It may not have seemed like it, and it was rather boring in terms of what it was fighting for. But when you're in Voltark's position, think about it. How often do you get under Biohazard the way they did? Not very often at all. Biohazard is extremely low to the ground. So in all fairness, I don't think I would let go either. And he won. He won the entire fight, as one would have expected for someone who dominated the entire fight in general. Because he never really let Biohazard go, and I don't know how he would have been able to let Biohazard go, because Biohazard was so firmly attached, was so firmly on the wedge. It's not like it was just a little bit, and Biohazard could have gotten off, but I mean, we can't really see underneath, whether the lifting arm was being used, but I don't think he actually needed it. Biohazard was up there pretty firmly, and he was kept up there because of his own, ironically, his own anti-wedge skirts didn't really help him here at all. And, I guess it was at least, if you wanted total dominance, that's the fight you kind of watch, even though it's not probably the most dominant performance. I mean, it's not the most exciting way to dominate your opponent. You drag him all over, you get some sparks out of the deal, you get to see Biohazard in a position you'd never expect him to be he would do much better the next tournament. You'd never expect it. I mean, this is probably, unless you kind of sort of knew about the Las Vegas 1999 defeat where Vlad the Impaler toppled it with relative ease. Although I think even that was further in the tournament than this was. Biohazard, at least I think we did get to see him earlier in the tournament against Mjolnir, but that was an easy win. And arguably not a lot of victories for Biohazard would not be easy because, let's face it, Biohazard, as I said, he's very low to the ground. Very few robots can get underneath. Voltark, or Voltronic, as they would later be named, was one of them, although it was rather by luck, mostly other than anything else. To be fair, when you think about it, Robotic has had a similar incident with Jawbreaker, which we also know as Nasty Overbite on BattleBots, and General Chomsalot on Robot Wars Extreme Warriors. Did the exact same thing, only it was much more deliberate. I mean, yeah, Voltark was trying to get underneath, but I don't think he intended on staying that long. I mean, he was way excited for actually dominating that fight. I don't think he even remotely expected it. I don't think even Carlo Bernocchini expected to dominate have that fight go the way it did. I wouldn't have let go either. I mean, there's no rule. They weren't doing anything to prevent it, so obviously it was within the rules. But they changed it. Obviously, for later, you never see that happen again. That was just something, I mean, unfortunately, the way the rules sometimes work is they're in place, but something happens that is not against the rules, but needs to be added to the rules so that it doesn't happen again, because it's being, it's causing a situation that does not need to be there. In this case, Voltark getting under Biohazard and parading him around the arena. That needed to go. And they do manage to get that under control for the next tournament, so personally, I mean, I guess if you want, I guess it is somewhat the more action-packed fight, although there really aren't a whole lot in this episode in general. Because you got Ramstein versus Mechadon, which was rather short, I think only because, actually, no, I think that went 3 minutes as well, but it was another dominant performance, only because, let's face it, Mechadon as a walker, but being 400 and some odd pounds, is not going to help it against a bot like Ramstein. Ramstein was able to easily control it. I think it even got one of the actuators had broken after that. Was not able to get out of the spike strip, and that I think was part of the reason why the spike strip actually gets a little Lexan cover in the next season between the spike strips. There's actually a little gap between the polycarbonate wall and the spike strip itself. There was a gap, but there was nothing covering it to prevent that. It was also Although it takes a little while, because even after that, you got No Tolerance gets stuck in there as well. But after that, it's fine. They put the plexi. It must not have come in that time, or they didn't realize it was really a problem. They just kind of shrugged it off as a one-off. But arguably, I think the better fight is Biohazard versus Voltark for a lot of reasons. Mostly because, I mean, you get to see a little bit of change of pace. He's bringing it to every arena hazard. You don't know what's going to happen next. You don't know whether Biohazard's going to get off. I mean, they tried to get off. I think Colorado was trying to get Biohazard off by raising the arm, but not really going to help him at that stage. And then you got Tendemushi versus Alpha Raptor, which was another relatively dominant performance. Just kind of showing how ineffective the design of Ladybug Tendemushi was. I mean, it doesn't really get a whole lot better. I mean, Tendemushi proves to be more of a crowd favorite than anything else, mostly just for show. Not really able to, succeed anywhere. Because generally the capturing your opponent doesn't really do anything if your opponent has more power than you do. They can just drag you around the arena, and as it turns out, your Alpha Raptor was able to cause some damage to the shell. Cosmetic damage, but damage nonetheless. Visible damage that left Tendemushi out in that battle. I think that was a relatively one-sided performance again, but nowhere near as controversial. Neither of the two fights after that were as controversial as Voltark versus Biohazard. Although, I think from the commentary standpoint, you weren't going to be able to tell. I think it was only after that where people started to go, hey, wait a minute, Voltark should not have been able to do that. I found on the BattleBots Delphi forums that there was no rule in place. It was only about pitting your opponent against the wall for 3 minutes. And that's understandable. That's a boring fight, and that's not really all that fair. I mean, what good is having a different design than your opponent if the opponent's just going to pin you on the wall for 3 minutes? I mean, everybody wants exciting fights, so you're expecting a robot to go all over the place. And that's some of the hazards in the arena actually sort of make the fights more exciting. I mean, that's kind of why they're there. They also cause a little more danger. They also prompt you to be a little bit better at driving, because if you're bad at driving, you're going to hit the kill saws or the pulverizer, and in some cases, even the ramrods can cause damage. I mean, some of the not damage, but as you see, if you're hit the wrong way, you'll end up knocking yourself out. And the piston was probably the #1 hazard that caused the most ends to fights. Even the kill saws didn't cause as much, even though they were more damaging, at least for the first couple seasons. When you get down to it, it's not a bad episode. It's better than, arguably better than seeing Overkill versus Frenzy. Watching them miss a million times in 3 minutes without really getting anything. And even then, they weren't damaging hits. They were glancing blows, if anything else. But it's an improvement, but not a whole lot. Once we get to Season 2.0, things get a little more interesting. A little more unusual events happen. We'll, kind of... You can find out for yourself. I mean, all the fights are online, so you can see where I'm going with this. But yeah, that's my review on BattleBots Season 1.0, Episode 6. Thanks for